Ooh la la, hey. We're back with a new video. Ooh la la, hey. I'm recording multiple videos again since I have the time to record videos, so then I'm gonna record as many videos as I can. One of the other videos that got sent in last week or in the last couple of months, I'm not sure, I can't remember anymore. It was in the Discord channel. If you want to have your video submitted for me to make a reaction to them, please go to the Discord channel, submit it in your submissions text channel, and it might be selected. The video that we're gonna look at today or react to today is, was socialist Yugoslavia's economy really that powerful? Since, well, if you don't know my channel, I made a lot of content about Yugoslavia and Bosnia and Herzegovina throughout the years at the beginning of my channel, so you can check that out on my channel. Did a lot of research to our modern history. I have a lot of knowledge about it, and I've seen a lot of different sources when it comes to videos, books, and of course I am from the region. I grew partially up in that region, so I know a lot about it. So let's see. Was socialist Yugoslavia's economy really that powerful? From a channel called Lavader or Levader, I'm not sure. It has 9.5k views 6 months ago, so it's not that old. Okay, let's take a look on what this guy has to say about socialist Yugoslavia and its economy. This is the same music as the guy Balkan Odyssey or Serbian Mapping or however you want to call it. It's the same music.
For many, life in socialist Yugoslavia
He's literally copying the style one-on-one. Okay.
was a life without flaws, where everyone had a job and had high standards of living. These are the sorts of stories you would always hear from elderly people in the areas of the former Yugoslavia who lived in a time.
Why is there like a small same video screen here? Huh? Okay.
Of Tito. These stories would start to develop the political views of many young people who started out identifying as Titoists and kept promoting the brotherhood and unity ideology. And I was...
Is Titoists an official thing? Or is it just a word he came up with? I'm not sure.
No exception to this. I started out my political career as a Titoist thanks to all these stories I heard from my grandparents and other people. But gradually, I began to question my beliefs and later on left Titoism.
Left Titoism like it's a kind of sect or something. The Illuminati from the Balkans.
But recently, I started looking more into socialist Yugoslavia, wanting to see if all these stories were indeed true, and I discovered several interesting points about the Yugoslavian economy in the times of Tito that I am eager to share. Let us dive in and see if the stories of the strong Yugoslavian economy really are real.
I'm not sure that I've heard anyone ever say strong economy. Stable, that's what I heard, and at least having a standard of living for everyone, but not a strong economy, like we are an economic powerhouse of the region. I mean, we were for some period after the Second World War when rebuilding the country because we had massive growth at that period of time, but I don't really think you can say that. I mean, at least I have never heard people say that it was like a strong economy. It was okay.
At the end of World War II, Yugoslavia was a completely devastated state, with a very small number of educated and literate people. Through a series of 5-year plans, which at the time were the backbone of the communist reconstruction plan, an accelerated process of rebuilding the war-torn country began. The fact is that in the first years after the end of the Second World War, life really did begin to improve. Numerous factories, hospitals, schools were opened, road and railway communication was built, and the media gained in importance. In the years after the war and during the 1950s, Yugoslavia had an economic growth of about 26% per year.
Which is insane, and that's what I mentioned with actually there being quite some growth, yes, after World War II, but that's really, compared to any other country in the world right now, that's like fucking massive growth.
Now, of course, it was far easier to raise a war-torn state from its foundations than to upgrade it after the foundations were established. The success of the economy in the first years after the war was significantly influenced by the help of the Allies, especially the United States, as well as the confiscation of property of rich families who were accused of collaborating with enemy parties.
Not only the United States, like the whole West basically shared and invested in each other in order to rebuild, because everyone was bombed shit basically from the war. So only the US is not really the case, to be honest.
After the initial euphoria in the first 15 years after the end of the war, Yugoslavia fell into its first set of problems. The dose of stability was soon disrupted by her foreign policy position. There was less and less assistance from the West. This significantly affected the further.
He makes it sound like we're only coupled to the West, which is not the case at all. Yugoslavia was like literally the reason why it was there or founded by Tito is to be a balance between West and East and use both sides to its benefit. So, and the fact also that Yugoslavia was friends with basically any other nation outside of Europe and like the Western countries as well. So looking to Asia, India, etc. No, I kind of disagree with the stuff he says here.
Industrial and agricultural development, which in the end stagnated. And not to mention that there is a split at the very top of politics. Different views on the economy and the conflict between the centralists and the federalists have significantly contributed to the worsening of the situation. However, as in the spirit of the totalitarian apparatus, the Communist Party and the Yugoslav People's Army controlled all public life. The deterioration of the situation in the country did not easily reach ordinary citizens.
Bro, until the first reforms, yes, it was quite communist, but still never the same level of communist as in the USSR. So the level of control over the people was not that big. Was really not that big. It even got less and less over time, and especially with the first package reforms where people were allowed to leave the country, work abroad, etc. Tourism was opened up. That's when everything completely went like to a 80% capitalist, 20% communist setup basically. So public life was being controlled. Oh hell no, I disagree with that as well.
Life was still fairly stable, but the first serious cracks slowly started to appear. After a thorough insight into the economic situation in the country, the party's top leadership, led by Edvard Kardelj, Vladimir Bakaric, and Kiro Gligorov, and a number of economic experts, decided to change the economic apparatus. Due to the growth of foreign debt, the 5-year plan was abandoned, and then at the 8th Congress of the League of Communists of Yugoslavia in 1964, the Great Economic Reform was announced. The reform was expanded the following year with a series of measures and was officially announced in July 1965. About 30 new laws have been passed and included in the new 5-year plan for economic and social development, which was adopted by the Federal Assembly the following year. The main goal of the reform was more intensive work, respect for economic categories, and faster increase in productivity. Certain measures of a financial nature have also been taken: devaluation of the dinar, restriction of customs protection, increase in the price of imports, and encouragement of exports. Traffic abroad was also liberalized, so that citizens could go to the West and work there without any problems. Investment funds were also abolished, capital was transferred to banks, and the convertible dinar was introduced. This endeavor meant the introduction of the capitalist mode of trade, reducing
Yeah, exactly. The economic system was more capitalist-based.
investment and inflation. The reform has led to falling employment. The new measures have
Not really falling employment, more the fact that people were moving out of the country because the borders were open now and they could make more money abroad. So falling employment, they were still employed, but not within the borders of Yugoslavia. They were still sending the money to Yugoslavia, so I'm not sure if that can be taken as like a big point.
caused stagnation in a number of industries, leading to more and more people leaving the country for jobs abroad, thanks to the reform giving more people the ability.
Yeah, my grandpa, for example, had companies, or yeah, worked for companies, but also had a company in different sort of countries. He's been to so many countries. I talked to him like, 3-4 weeks ago. He's been to Montenegro, Slovenia, Germany, Austria. He's been to so many countries and worked there for like, not for a couple of months, but like literally for a year, 2 years, etc. So it's pretty interesting, yeah, to hear like how many people actually traveled and worked in so many countries abroad, but never actually moved out of Yugoslavia.
To leave. In addition to the departure of manual workers, more and more highly educated people were leaving, which will additionally affect the economic improvements of Yugoslavia. The reform also provoked social movements. Since it did not suit the old business leaders, the workers were worried about losing their jobs. The reform was increasingly showing its negative side. Unemployment rose, foreign debt soared, workers strike.
Unemployment rose for those still in Yugoslavia with, let's say, the lower end of jobs or lower skilled jobs in the market, basically.
And unrest in Croatia and Kosovo. Soon, federalists and centralists began to clash with each other, blaming each other for the failure of the reform. The reform stopped in the early 1970s and pushed Yugoslavia into ruin from which it would not recover. Already in the late 1970s and early 1980s, unemployment in Kosovo was 57%, while in Bosnia and Herzegovina, the percentage was around 20.6%. This was the so-called hidden unemployment. The surplus of employees has actually become a technological surplus, and they are only registered as employees on paper. As I mentioned before, the Yugoslav government and army controlled all public life, so the vast majority of citizens were not aware of the deteriorating situation.
Just, no man, literally no. Like the people knew what was going on. Like I literally had a talk with my grandpa, and I tell you, he was a real Yugoslav. Still kinda is, let's put it that way. Who's been through all these eras, all this stuff, traveled through all the countries, lived in all those countries, lived outside of Yugoslavia, etc. They knew what was going on. And not only he, but like many other people, they knew what was going on. But as long as you have a stable life, as long as you have bread on the table, you know, it can always be worse. That's a little bit of our mentality. When things are shit, we basically say, can always be worse. As long as we have food on the table and there's, we're okay. We're like, people were satisfied with the minimum, let's say, because we were used to living by the minimum.
The totalitarian system tried to cover up such a picture of the situation with an idyllic report on the opening of various new factories around the nation, such as the opening of a factory for hydraulic systems in Čapljina.
Actually, I have friends of the family that live in Čapljina. Been there actually 4 times, I think.
Mid-1980s, about 60% of the unemployed were under the age of 25. The problem of nepotism became more and more apparent. It became almost impossible to find a job without party and family ties. Productivity...
Not a job. A high-paying job on a high position, yes. But the job in general, no. There was enough jobs still available for other people. Well, not in this period. And also depending, again, Yugoslavia is a big country, don't forget that. So the things that you can show is maybe a protest in one part of Yugoslavia, for example, in Kosovo, where, I don't know, a couple of hundred or a couple thousand people are protesting from the millions of people living in Yugoslavia, which today make up, 5-6 countries, something like that. So calling that general unrest is a bit too optimistic.
Exports have also declined, with the first accusations of poor business performances appearing in the media. Realizing that the 1965 reform did more harm than good, the state leadership began to borrow money as early as the 1970s. Interest rates were initially favorable, so at the end of the 1970s, Yugoslavia's debt amounted to only $9.5 billion US. After the United States changed
which is literally nothing compared to today's standards for any country.
its monetary policy, There was a sharp rise in interest rates. Inflation reached 45% in 1981, and by the time Yugoslavia disintegrated, it had risen to over 1000%.
Yeah, I have all these inflation bills of the Yugoslav dinar framed in my house, so definitely know about this, but yeah, that's what inflation does. On this topic, if you want to know how to protect yourself from inflation also in today's standard, I have a video on my channel where it says where I invest my money in. Take a look onto that video, because it's actually maybe quite helpful for the ones out here that have money saved up, being eaten away by inflation over the past couple of years especially.
Foreign products were disappearing from the market, and there was the first shortage of oil, equipment and raw materials. And the condition of the farmers was getting even worse. In the aftermath, they never managed to get a pension and lived on an incentive that could be delayed by 5 months. The school system, in which Yugoslavia relied so much, also failed. Before the collapse of the state, only 10% of the population had a university degree.
Bro, what? It failed? Are you kidding me? We're coming from an era or a period of time after the Second World War where more than half of the country was illiterate, not able to write and read. 10% of people completing a university degree is actually super high. In the Netherlands, in this time, this time when I finished university, it's like 5 years ago, something like that. Only 3% of the whole country of 18 million people, so that is way more than used to live in Yugoslavia, complete their university studies. The goal of these reforms of the educational system in Yugoslavia was not to get people as highly educated as possible, but to give them at least the bare minimum form of education where they know how to read and write, have general knowledge about things in the world, and not be completely retarded. So, and then still having 10% of people completing university degrees, which is super high. You cannot compare that with America, where literally almost every form of school is called university. No, if you complete university in Yugoslavia, I bet you're one of the a real smart guy. That's just, I don't want to swear too much, but you're a really smart guy if you can complete a university degree back then in that time. So I saying that the educational system failed, hell no.
Due to the great shortage of oil, Yugoslavia passed a law in 1979 introducing the so-called even-odd law. One day, people could drive only cars with an even number plate, and the next day those with an odd number, and, as expected, it did not really help much with the crisis. There was only one part of the economy Yugoslavia could potentially rely on to get out of this crisis, and that was tourism. Yugoslavia started investing a good amount of money in the tourism industry, with many promotional videos and songs.
Yep. I have a lot of people, like old people, that always just tell me that they went on holiday in Yugoslavia before the war, which is quite cool to know and to experience that people actually been there before shit kicked off, basically.
While Yugoslavia did start to gain a good tourism industry, it was far from enough to get out of the economic crisis. Gasoline vouchers are also being introduced, so everyone was entitled to 40 liters of gasoline per month. This situation has led to overcrowding of buses and trams, and the number of delays to work has increased by 50%. The standard of living fell by 34% between 1979 and 1984, and pensions by 40%. In such a situation, vouchers for basic foodstuffs also appear: coffee, sugar, flour, oil, detergent, and etc. In the end, we can conclude that life in Yugoslavia was very similar to today's life in Bosnia or Serbia, far from this haven you would hear from the stories. Yugoslavia, even under Tito, suffered from many economic problems, which were not so easy to notice in the beginning thanks to the regime. Now, I am not trying to say that Yugoslavia should have adopted capitalism as its economic system or anything, nor am I trying to say that capitalism is a far superior economic system. I am simply responding to the rumors and stories about Yugoslavia's economy being very strong and successful.
I don't know about those rumors. That's one thing I have to say. Other thing I have to say, 34%, percentages do not say a lot for the daily life of a person. So if the standard of living decreased by 34%, but you still have bread on the table, you still have free education for kids, you still have a job, you still have a roof above your head, those are things that you might say, oh yeah, that's just normal. It's not, because today in all those countries it's not normal anymore to have a house above your head, a roof above your head, not a house. A house will be quite heavy, but I hope you get the point what I'm trying to make.
But anyway, thank you all for watching this video. If you would love to see more, then hit the subscribe button and ring the bell. And until then, I will see all of you in the next video.
Good video, I have to say. I mean, well put together, but some things kind of out of context, some things I highly disagree with. I give you my comments on that, but I have to say he made the video pretty well, and you can see he put some time and effort into it. But yeah, as like someone who's really on top of this topic, I would say, kind of have to disagree with the main points he made there. Nothing bad, of course. Thank you for sending in this video, whoever it was. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, leave a like down below. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and I see all of you in the next one. Ciao.
Perfect.